Welcome to Lights in the Night with your host, Russ Johnson. Uncover the truth about alien contact and hear from insiders who reveal the evidence. Stay tuned.
Well, welcome to Lights in the Night once again. And today we got a very exciting story, a lot of information. You might want to take notes. And the gentleman, he's a very prolific, accomplished writer. And this is just one of his 15 books. There's another one here. And he talks about going back hundreds of thousands of years with the things that he's researched. And I appreciate you being here. Again, this is a real soft touch on aliens, UFOs, and all that stuff. We're just beginning. We call it UFO 101. How's that? Keep it simple. 101. Keep it very simple. We won't get very heavy today, except to say there's some information that you need to know that will fit in with your research as you go to Gaia or Cosmic Connections or George Norey and watch his Beyond Belief and all the other programs, Ancient Aliens and all that. This is going to be good for you. So we have Frank here, who's a super writer. Frank A. Ruffolo.
Yeah.
Thank you for the pronunciation.
No problem.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Russell.
He's written 15 books. What you're pretty prolific in your writing.
Yeah, I've got 2 more in the works coming out, so that'll be a total of 17.
Wow.
But those are more murder mysteries. I have a 4-series book based on the writings of the Bible and the Old Testament and Book of Enoch and Kabbalah and all that stuff.
So you have to do a lot of research.
I do a lot of research, and it goes from the days leading up to Judgment Day to 1,300 years later. But it delves into ancient civilizations on Mars and the Tunguska effect in Siberia and HAARP.
Wow.
And
you covered all
that stuff. So,
what book would you recommend for people who are just delving into all of this, talking about UFO, UAPs, and Tunguska and all that?
On my books?
Yeah. This one?
Well, Gable's Chalice is the first one. That's this book starts Tres Archangelis, which means 3 archangels.
Uh-huh.
That starts 25 years after Judgment Day, which delves into the Watchers of Earth, and it touches on things that I wrote about that now happen, that NASA is talking about they're doing now.
Like what?
In the book, I talk about. In the book, I wrote this book in 2011. So I talk about how NASA is going to be mining water on the moon for fuel, and now that's what NASA wants to do.
Right.
And I also talk about mining an asteroid for value, for precious metal, which astronauts wants to do. And of course, I spin that, and I talk about what happens if there's a casualty.
But how would you say a few minutes ago, life is on the moon? What are you talking about? Life is on Mars. Is that what you said?
Well, initially what's going to happen, NASA is going to put a base on the moon to mine water. Because there's water on the moon.
Okay.
And what they want to do is create rocket fuel from the water. They're going to separate it and get the hydrogen and oxygen, because it's easier to explore space with our current technology by blasting off from the moon than it is to blast off from Earth. You use less fuel. But I also talk about a future past civilizations that happened in Mars that you can research through the books that Russell talked about. But if you really want to get some pictures, if you go to the NASA archives on the pictures, you will see pictures that the Mars rover on Mars took, and you will see that they took a picture of what appears to be Egyptian-like statues and a mountain range of Mars.
And you say so pyramids.
And there's also pyramids on Mars.
Okay. Now, for the novice who haven't delved into any of this, How do you think they feel about this? How do you feel about the congressional hearings they held recently, saying there's a possibility that aliens are here, that they exist?
Well, this is slowly going to come out.
Okay.
All right. So
Okay.
they're going to. They've been gaslighting us for a long time, but now they're going to slowly come out with, well, there's a possibility. Well, we think this could happen. Well, and then as time goes on, a little bit more is going to be leaked, and a little bit more is going to be leaked. You know, Bob Lazar started it with the major, when his interview, and now it's slowly all going to come out about that. It's going to come out about Antarctica. It's going to come out about all that other
But
stuff.
you got all that down pat.
Yeah, I know all that.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Where do you get it
And
from?
Admiral Byrd.
You know 1947? You mean 1947?
When Byrd went to...
Operation High Jump? You know about that?
I know about that.
How about Operation Paperclip?
Paperclip, I've heard. I don't know too much about it, but I've heard about Paperclip.
All right, let's do something for me, because there's so many subjects you're wise, are knowledgeable. Operation High Jump, what happened to Alvin Byrd? What was that all about?
Okay, the U.S. government sent Byrd to Antarctica just to explore it. Because nothing was going on. So they sent him down there in 1947 to explore Antarctica. This was a continent, a nice continent they knew nothing about. And in his writings and in his logs, he flew over a section of Antarctica which was an opening in the ice. And he flew his plane into the opening, and he ended up in a area which was like a rainforest.
Right.
It was lush, it was grass, it was trees. And he landed, and he met a civilization there, and they told him that they've been there for eons. So when he came back and reported this to the federal government, they went, oh, you can't talk about that. They just cut him off. They said, you can't talk about that. It's all in his writings. It's all in his logs.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, so it's documented.
It's documented. It's documented. Byrd documented what he saw. He saw a city. He saw a landing strip. They met him. They guided him in. He landed his plane.
Wow.
The whole thing.
Wow.
And now there's that section of Antarctica nobody can fly over.
Okay. Well, that's it. The government sent him there just to do what? To
They just sent him there. They didn't know what Antarctica was.
Okay.
So he was an explorer. So he went down with ships and planes.
Right.
And
full men.
For
4,000.
and they were going to go down there to explore and claim Antarctica for U.S. and they did. But he also found this. He also found what a lot of people call the inner world, another civilization that has been there for eons.
Wow.
And then the government said, oops, you can't talk about that.
Why not talk about that? I don't. I'm just
Control.
Kidding. Oh, control.
You know,
So
they don't want to lose their power. The governments, they don't want, my belief is, they don't want to let people know that they are not the power and they are not in control. There's something more, there's something here on Earth, or there's something in the universe that is more powerful than they are.
So this is all about control.
This is all about control.
So the president, the pope, the pimp, whatever.
Yeah,
about
right.
control.
Well, Eisenhower knew. He had supposedly had he had a meeting with the aliens. So
Okay, you mean 1952, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base?
Yeah.
How about Holloman Air Force Base for 1954?
well, Holloman Air Force Base is all part of. They put a
Right. So that's documented now.
Yeah,
That he met with and had an agreement.
he had an agreement.
Okay, with what species of alien? Was it the Greys,
was it
reptilians?
It was the I don't know if it was the Greys or the Nordics.
Okay.
Was it the Nordics?
It could have been the Nordics, yeah, right. Wow.
Yeah, I think it was the Nordics.
But he couldn't say anything then.
But he couldn't say anything either.
Why? He was president. He was a 5-star general. Come on. Why?
Of course. Why?
Again, why? The big mystery.
It's the big mystery. Why? Why? Who's in control here?
Wow.
Why?
Wow. Okay. Let's talk about control just a wee bit since you're a great writer. We're talking about BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard.
Oh, geez. Okay.
Okay. What do they control and why? Give us that. For the people who don't know.
BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street almost control everything.
Ah.
They have control. They are they're a mutual fund. They invest in companies, and they make money for people who want to buy their mutual fund. It's a mutual fund, okay. But what they have done is they've got their fingers in most of the major corporations in the world. They own the stock.
88%.
80, right?
Right.
Of the big corporations like Boeing, like
Of course.
all the defense contractors, Amazon, all of them, all the big companies. So what do these three companies do? They basically control the board of directors and the stockholders, and they tell the companies, they enforce on these companies what they want their policy to be.
Wow.
So they basically are controlling the world through these companies.
Uh-huh. Have you ever seen the motion picture, what's that, Jim Carrey, what was that? He was in the cul-de-sac.
Oh, was that the one where he's like
Yeah.
a fake? I forgot the name. Yeah.
Right, right.
I thought you was going to say what was the one with Anne Rain?
The cable guy. Is that
Yeah,
right?
the cable. Well, yeah, it was a cable guy, but there was
I'm the UFO guy.
you're the UFO guy. Yeah.
UFO-guy.com. But this is really interesting. If you're saying, a lot of people probably ABC, you saying ABC, CBS, and NBC, all of those are owned by.
They all have stock investments in the major companies.
Okay.
So
So-
when you have enough stock investment in a major company, you basically control what that company you basically control the policy of that company.
So you think what was you saying that we basically are controlled?
The world is basically controlled by corporations.
Okay. So we are like pawns on a chessboard.
Yeah, if there's a chessboard, we're the pawn. There's a whole lot of people up on top of us, and we're at the bottom of we're at the bottom of that level. We're the pawn.
I should ask you about Trump. He seems like to be out of it. He seems to be on a different level of programming.
He seems to be wanting to upset the apple cart. Is basically what he seems to be.
So
wanting to do.
so you think the State Street Vanguard, they're not happy with him? It's Illuminati, they're not too happy with him? Or what? What would you say?
I don't. I hate to say something. I don't really
Well,
want to.
you say it quietly. We're helping the people. They want to know. You've done a lot.
Well,
right.
BlackRock just invented a whole bunch of Bitcoin.
Oh, okay.
So, and they invested in a whole bunch of other stuff. So I don't know if they're happy with Trump, or they're unhappy and now they're just going to go along, or if they get really unhappy with Trump, there may be some other
Okay, all right.
going on.
All right. Now, we said that Eisenhower did meet with some aliens, and you said that's documented.
Yeah.
How about any other president? Has any other president had any meetings with him?
I don't. You know what? I don't. From what I've.
How about
But
Truman? How about Truman, 1947?
I didn't, well,
Roswell.
I haven't. See, I didn't. Well, that's possible. Roswell. That was Truman, right?
Yeah, Truman. Yeah, Roswell. And
I don't know if he met with, or if they even told him what was happening. He probably knows, or probably knew.
Right.
But,
Okay. But he couldn't say anything.
He probably. Well, no, nobody could. Well, it's.
Even as a president, he can't say anything. Is that what you're saying? There are forces, the 100 families that control the world.
Even as a president, they can't say anything.
I see. That's a lot of control.
Yeah, but now now with the hearings that they've had in Washington,
Okay.
and the change of the guard, I would say it is slowly going to be released.
It leaked out. Like Lou Alexander, he has written a book called Eminent, and then David Grush was before him, and so they're leaking a little bit at a time.
They're leaking a little bit at a time. How they're feeding us slowly.
Okay, but you can't eat the elephant all at once.
There you go.
Okay.
Perfect example.
Let's go back in history. How about 1938 with War of the Worlds, Orson Welles? He had that show, and that was a disruptor.
Right.
Tell us about that. People were shook up about that, right?
Extremely.
Okay, talk about that so people can Google that and go listen to that.
Well, what Orson Welles did, he came out with a radio show which was basically a show. It was just a fiction show where he presented it almost like if it was an actual live news event, that there was an invasion in I don't know what it was, Jersey maybe somewhere?
Something up in that area, yeah,
that
right.
aliens came down.
Right.
Now back then, because there wasn't any internet, and there wasn't that much live TV, there wasn't really any TV back then. It was basically just radio.
Yeah.
People that were listening to it thought
True.
it really happened.
True.
And I could see how they could think it was really happening, because they presented the show as if it was like a news event.
I got it. And people can listen to it if you just, because I Googled it the other day.
Yeah, you can listen to it and Google it. And
Yeah.
it was a live radio show, like this radio show.
Right.
Only he was coming up by saying, oh, aliens have landed, they took over this, and it was a big event and all that. And people were upset, really upset.
You think, and then they had the Roswell incident in 1947. You think because of the reaction of the people in 38, that they say, don't tell those people anything?
I think that's what I think the people in power thought the U.S., well, back then, now we're more a little aware of the world than we were back then. But they probably thought we could not handle that type of information. So they said, you can't give this information out. I think the people today are more
Well, Jack Nicklaus said
in
that
tune.
in a motion picture, A Few Good Men, he said they can't handle the
They can't
truth.
handle the truth.
That may be true.
It could be true. But I don't know so much today if they can't handle the truth. Back then, I would say, yeah, they couldn't handle the truth.
Okay. But how about Antarctica? You talked about that a bit. Now, the Germans took that over in the 30s, the early 40s. Is that right?
The Germans were there.
Okay. They're
And
still there.
They're still there. Everybody's there now.
Okay.
Now, so.
Okay.
But the Germans were there. I think they tried to build I think they built a base there.
Right.
In the
right.
30s or 40s.
Base 211.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
they can punch that up.
And
Base
they
211.
probably know. They probably knew who was there.
Okay.
I can only theorize that some of the advancements that they have made in their weaponry during World War II was based on what they learned down there.
Okay. So they met some entities.
They met some indigenous people.
A lot of people recently, even the producer of the program, Freddie Santori, he says that he heard about some underground bases under the pyramids around the world. Do you got any information on that?
Well, they found something under the pyramids. Originally, they said it was large columns in a deep tunnel, and then somebody said, no, there's a complete city under there. And then the head archaeologist of Egypt, oh no, there's nothing under there.
Okay.
All right, but they also found chambers underneath the Sphinx.
Right.
So the pyramids, I believe, were built. They weren't tombs. The pyramids were built to produce or distribute energy.
Okay. Energy vortex.
They were basically doing what Tesla wanted to do.
What did
And what Tesla did.
Okay.
And they ran out of money. It was to transmit Tesla was able to transmit energy
free
through the air, electricity through the air and through the earth.
And he was stopped by whom?
Well, he ran out of money, but he was stopped by J.P. Morgan
And
because he wanted to give free electricity.
because J.P. Morgan wanted the money.
J.P. wanted, no, we can't do that. You got to charge him, and he didn't want to do that. But then he cut off Tesla. Didn't give him any more money. They had to stop. He had built a big tower in Colorado, and he was building a bigger one on Long Island.
Okay.
And then he ran out of money. And then when he died, the FBI came in and confiscated all his records.
Oh, and that's about 1942. They did that. Okay. They took all. What did they do with the records? Do you know?
Oh, they still have them somewhere, of course, but who knows what they really did with them. But they confiscated them.
Guess who they gave it to? They called him John T. Trump, a professor at MIT, and gave it to him. The uncle of Trump.
The uncle of Don Trump.
Yep. They gave it to him.
Okay.
And when he passed on, I'm sure he passed it on to Donald Trump, who happened to he started the Space Force.
He started Space Force.
Why?
Well, because
he knows a little bit more than we know.
I think he knows more than I think he knows more. I think some of the presidents knew more than they said than they said they've known.
Okay. Well, what book would you recommend for people to delve into some of this?
I would start with Tres Archangelis, which delves into the Tunguska effect and the mining of asteroids and the base on the moon. Xanthe Terra is more of a horror story, but it delves into the ancient civilization on Mars.
Mm-hmm. What happened in Tunguska, whatever that is?
Tunguska effect.
What is that?
In Tunguska, which is a section of Siberia, back in 1908.
Yeah.
There was a huge explosion. They don't know what caused. At the time, didn't know what the explosion caused. It devastated miles and acres and acres and acres of trees. Just came down. Mm-hmm. And there's a section of Siberia today which is still blocked off. You can't get into that melted. The tundra melted, and it never re-solidified.
Is it right?
It's still, there's a section that they have wiped off that
so
you can't
trees,
get into.
Nothing can grow there?
Nothing can grow there.
Is that right?
It's just melted. It's just
So if people
ground.
want to do a little research,
So
they can see it's empty.
Well, you can't get close. You can look at, the Russian government, you can't get close. I mean, you can look at it, but you can't get in there. And what happened, I did some investigation to write my book. Nomad tribes that lived in Siberia at the time said they were telling a Russian official they saw lights coming up from the ground, beams of lights coming up from the ground and beams of lights coming down from the sky, and then there was a big explosion.
We didn't have the atomic bomb then.
And there was no atomic bomb then. There was no radiation. No one knew about radiation or atomic bomb or anything.
Atomic bomb wasn't happening until about 1945.
Right. So
what do you think it was?
Well, they eventually came out and said, well, it must have been a comet that exploded. Mm-hmm. But I researched. They sent an expedition team. The Russians sent an expedition team of scientists to this area because they were told that there was, in this melted tundra, there were 3 metal objects that were there, and slowly they were going back down into the earth. They were melting into the tundra. Mm-hmm. So when the Russian scientists got there, they didn't see anything. And this one guy went out with a probe and a long pole, and when he started poking into the ground, he hit something metal. Oh. That was in the ground. Mm-hmm. Well, what happened is they started to get sick. These people got sick when they went there.
Okay.
And at the time, they didn't know what radiation poisoning was or what it was, but their hair was falling out, the nails were falling out, the teeth were falling out. The people died. So they blocked the area off. Nobody can get in. When they realized what that is was radiation poisoning.
I see. Could have been.
So what are the metal objects that are under the ground? Nobody's talking about that. Mm-hmm. What was the original story that lights going up and lights going down and there was a big explosion, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of what you would call theorists say that maybe that was a spaceship, that there was some sort of fight. and the spaceship exploded.
Good. I'm glad you brought that up. You think then that, like the Bermuda Triangle and other places, Lake Titicaca in Peru, you think that the aliens are here?
Oh, yeah.
Is that right?
They've been here.
Well, we're talking about Anunnaki. Do you think they really made us, or changed our DNA or whatever? Do you hear that story with Zachariah Sitchin and others, and Van Daniken, but Chariot of the Gods? They talk about a lot of that. Do you think that's possible?
My theory is based in biblical teaching.
Right.
Okay. So what I believe, and I've heard from other biblical people, when God created the universe, life was created here and other places.
So
there's millions of planets.
So we're not alone.
We're not alone.
We're not alone.
And
so people got to get used to that.
If you want to call the Anunnaki, I would call them the angels.
Okay.
Did God create life here on Earth in His image? Yes. Did He create life somewhere else? Probably. We are probably not the only people that were created.
So we got to get used to the idea that they are here.
They're here.
Okay.
And another thing you need to realize, yes, a lot of the aliens you see flying around here, they take pictures of, are alien spaceships, but a lot of that stuff was built here.
Oh, okay. Stephen Greer talks about that, doesn't he?
A lot of stuff was built here because they interviewed the CEO, the ex-CEO of BlackRock, about 20 years ago.
Okay.
And they asked him about what technology the United States has, and he said, I can't talk about that, but I can tell you this, and this was 20 years ago, that the U.S. has the technology to send ET home.
Okay, all right. So, case closed. And you do a lot of research.
I have to.
Yeah, I know. You have to write 15 books, yeah. Well, listen, I appreciate you being here today.
I appreciate you having me.
And you have a show.
And I have a show.
When is your show?
Artist Loft is on every other Thursday, and not this, so it'll be next Thursday.
Uh-huh.
We have the Artist Loft show, which we interview people in the art industry and entertainment and
so the upcoming artists, you can help them?
Yeah.
Okay. What should they call you, 888-994-4995 or what?
During the show, yeah, they can do that. Or
Okay.
if they want, they can contact us on our website, which is www.floridaartsnetwork.org. And they can either be a sponsor, book themselves on the show, make a donation.
Okay.
We're a 501c3.
You're a 501c3?
Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Okay. You need to do a fundraiser like Freddie is doing.
We're working on that.
Okay, right. Frank, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
You've done a lot of work. You're helping us a lot, and we appreciate you being on the program.
And I appreciate you having me, Russ.
And we'll see you next time.
We'll
right
see
here.
you next time.
Lights of the Night, and listen to this program on next Thursday. Have a good one, and thank you for listening.
Thank you for joining us on Lights in the Night. Keep your eyes on the skies and stay curious. Until next time.